The GHRI was established formally on paper in 1999, and then the actual operations started in 2000. And the origin of GHRI, the reason for its establishment was the fact that Dr. Guy Harvey, PhD, is a marine scientist, and his business was doing quite well, and he wanted to give back to marine conservation.
We knew this was the right thing to do because we were posed with a relationship, and both an academic relationship and a business relationship. So here we had a great scientist from the University of West Indies, and there was a business relationship in that the initial idea was cause marketing. The idea would be that licensees of the Guy Harvey brand would contribute a certain amount to research, a certain amount to the Guy Harvey group. It would be the best of both worlds.
The very first expedition we executed was to Walker's Key in the Bahamas, which of course at that time was shark central for many different species. And I distinctly recall the first trip we went there with Dr. Richard Spieler and Mahmood, and we were all in the water taking biopsies from Caribbean reef sharks. I'll never forget that day. It was like the inaugural expedition. It went really well. We had lots of sharks to deal with, and I was really excited about what the future held.
And we started out with a variety of different kinds of work and kind of small projects on fish and billfish and sharks, but then it evolved over the years, and I think probably the initial break point was using DNA studies to understand how many sharks were being killed by fisheries and by the fin trade, which is a staggering amount, and the world didn't know that.
Once we got that number out, once we published that paper, that helped change global marine fishery management policy related to sharks, because finally countries around the world, including the US, started seriously implementing conservation measures because there was no way that killing that many sharks a year was sustainable.
And it led to a management solution using a very important forensic scientific technique that hadn't been applied to the ocean before.
The most amazing thing in the last 2 decades has been the evolution of the technology that has really allowed us to become, even though it's a little invasive, but learn more about the secret lives of some of these really ocean-going migrants, especially the makos and the tigers.
These species are overexploited around the world, and we really need to conserve them better. And to conserve them better, we need to understand how they work. We need to understand their migrations, for example.
And I think some of the work we did on tigers in particular was revolutionary because we changed our complete perception and our knowledge of these animals. And the most amazing thing about the tiger sharks, of course, was that they spend 6 months of their life in a shallow reef situation, 6 months of their life in a deep ocean situation. And there's no other animal on the planet that shows that kind of diverse behavior. And I think that the sheer scale of these migrations alone was just mind-boggling, how tiger sharks on an annual basis would do 8 to 10,000 mile trips. And in a cyclical nature, they were doing this repetitively. They knew exactly where they had to be when, and they made sure they got there on time, so to speak.
We've tracked over 400 different individuals of different species, ranging from blue marlin to black marlin sailfish, including highly endangered and threatened species of sharks.
The Mako shark work, of course, has been the most productive because after all, we are looking for changes in how we administer and manage these resources gained from our data. And the Mako shark data provided us information not only about the extent of their migrations, but also how susceptible they are to overfishing.
The fishermen aren't trying to catch the Mako sharks. The Mako sharks are going to those locations for the same reason the fishermen are, because there's a lot of food there, there's a lot of prey there. And then they would get caught in these different fisheries, not targeting the Mako sharks. It opened everybody's eyes in terms of how many Mako sharks get caught and killed all over the world in all kinds of different fisheries.
Our discoveries about the extremely high fishing mortality rate for Makos got translated into government policy within a year. That's just sort of, it's unheard of. It certainly makes us feel tremendously good about the work that we're doing.
And that has led to further protections of that species, which is a great conservation advance.
And Guy's passion for the work itself, he comes out with us to actually do the research, but also the fact that he really wants to document all this work and the findings in terms of these wonderful documentaries that are being made. Allows us to get the word out really widely. And that's not an easy thing to do unless you own a television station or something, but this is a great mechanism to produce the shows and get them out because of Guy's celebrity.
And think of all the different species that we looked at. The whale sharks, the rays, the manta rays, the stingrays, tons of other work that we've done. The groupers in particular, Nassau grouper studies in Little Cayman, have also made big differences.
We've discovered new species of billfish that look just like white marlin. For example, something called a round-scale spearfish that people used to think was a white marlin. It turns out that these are two completely different species, and these are big animals, right? And nobody knew that the round-scale spearfish even existed in this part of the world.
Recently, the whole genome of the white shark is just a staggering scientific advance, both for understanding the genetics, but also for looking at advances in human health. How you can use shark genomics to better understand human genomics and make advances in helping humans with disease or wound issues.
We're studying the entire genome of these sharks to really understand what makes them tick, what makes them such amazing evolutionary marvels with such amazing biological capabilities. We just published a paper on characterizing the entire genome, the entire genetic blueprint of a great white shark. What we found was some really unexpected things tied to potentially helping human health down the road. For example, we found that these very large sharks, these large-bodied white sharks that live a long time, have undergone, at the genetic level, these advantageous changes, these adaptations in their DNA that make them so successful. And importantly, many of these changes were in genes that play a very important role in reducing the frequency of cancer and increasing their abilities to heal from wounds. I mean, both things that as humans, we would love to be able to have those properties. So we've just shown that white sharks have an ability to do this because of their genes. But genes can also be used to make proteins, which can be converted into drugs. And so we are now going down the pathway of exploring how these, let's call them superior genes in sharks, might actually lend themselves to making advances in human medicine. We've gone from a very, very small shop to now we've really become a world-recognized marine research entity.
We've published now, I think, about 150 peer-reviewed journals in that time, which is a lot for a small organization.
And it's this kind of university and administration support that has allowed the GHRI to blossom into an internationally recognized entity. And to allow us to continue doing this really, really critical marine conservation research.
So this has been a great partnership where a PhD scientist has led a great company and a great university has led research, and the melding of those two together has been beneficial for both. I think it's something to learn, and I think it can be emulated by other universities.
I'm optimistic that if that is done, we will be able to train a lot of young people to go out there and do research and do advocacy and to change minds and change policy to much better protect our oceans. The oceans control our very climate and therefore our well-being, the well-being of the entire planet. And it's critical that we do something to stop this continuous onslaught on the ocean and try and get the ocean and the oceanic ecosystems to recover again. That's a tremendous challenge, but it's not an impossible challenge.
One of the most gratifying parts of this, of course, has been the 20-year relationship with Professor Mahmood Shivji. And without his leadership and expertise, we'd never have got to where we got. And so thanks, Mahmood. You've done a great job. You're the tip of the spear in all our efforts.